Lumi stared on in horror at the devastation ahead of her. Tears began rolling down her face as she fell on the soft ground beneath. Lumi sat on the floor crying to herself, muttering, "Ajax, come back, don't leave me." The sounds of running and screaming echoed around her as Ajax Nox stared at her, watching her weep. Ajax Nox turned around, staring at Uriel, who was fast approaching. He looked worried, contrasting against the impassive expression on Ajax Nox. The sounds of Uriel running became louder, and without even giving him a glance, he ran past Ajax Nox. When Uriel approached Lumi, he immediately knew what had happened. He helped Lumi stand up before he spoke to her in a calm tone. "Lumi, it's going to be all right. I'm sure Ajax is safe. Let's get out of here." Lumi looked up at Uriel, wiping the tears from her face, before slowly nodding. Uriel and Lumi walked toward Ajax Nox. The ground beneath them began to shake, and as they arrived at Ajax Nox, Lumi spoke up with a shallow voice. "There is a place. My father never gave it a name, but it's safe there." Ajax Nox and Uriel stared intensely at Lumi as she spoke, both of them nodding in agreement. Lumi began casting the spell, and a bright purple light began emanating from Lumi's hands, forming a magic circle, when suddenly it shattered, and a single tear flowed down Lumi's cheek. Lumi's mind was getting filled with the time she saved Ajax's life, the first time she ever used magic without a magical crystal for aid. Ajax Nox, upon noticing the tear, kneeled down in front of Lumi, and with a soft voice he spoke, "Lumi, are you all right? Is it too painful to cast?" Lumi slowly nodded, as she began crying harder. Uriel, upon noticing Lumi crying, kneeled down beside her as well, and in unison with Ajax Nox they asked, "Is there any other way for you to cast it?" She wiped the tears from her face once more before responding, "When I came to this world I brought magic crystals, they could help." Both Ajax Nox and Uriel look at each other before Uriel asks Lumi, "And where are these crystals?" "It is in the tavern Ajax and I were staying in," Lumi answered, her voice soft. With a quick motion, Uriel swept Lumi off her feet, and the three of them began walking in the direction of the tavern, the ground cracking around them as they made their way. Meanwhile, on a cliff overlooking a beautiful sunset, EGS sat, his legs dangling over the ocean below. He spoke in a truly happy tone toward the grave beside him. "Your daughter even has a hidden type, just like you did. Perhaps she will become your replacement. I never wanted to kill you 4 million years ago, but because I did, your daughter became so interesting." As EGS finished speaking, he glared at the grave and spoke in a low tone. "It would be a shame to kill someone as interesting as her, but if she forces my hand." The once populated city in El Cluid was deserted. As the group made their way toward the tavern, they passed the once thriving Monsters Hunter Association was now barren, apart from 3 beast folk that were barricading the doors. Lumi and Uriel arrived at the tavern first, with Ajax Nox being close behind. They slowly entered the tavern, broken glass cracking beneath them. All 3 of them were shocked to see the tavern keeper pinned to the wall by a sword sticking through his chest. Lumi gagged on the smell as they entered, and she quickly made her way upstairs. The floor creaked as Lumi ascended the stairs, each step flooding her with memories of her time with Ajax from the first ever meal, where they made their first paycheck. Her heartbeat increased with every step she took. As Lumi reached the top of the staircase, she peered into her room. It was the only one that was still intact. Looking at her bed, a single tear flowed down her cheek. Lumi slowly made her way toward the bed. As the memories flooded back, she sat next to the floor, reminiscing of her time with Ajax. That dream, why would I get them now? I've lived for so long, so why are they only appearing now? Is it because I met Ajax? Lumi whispered to herself before grabbing her bag from under the bed. Lumi stood up, gripping the bag tightly. She notices her sword in the corner of her eye. Turning slowly, she noticed some writing on the wall. "He has such a nice scream when I hurt him, so maybe I won't return Ajax." Lumi stared in shock at the wall. She quickly grabbed her sword before running out of the room, a tear running down her face. Right as she exited the room, there was a blinding white flash coming from outside the tavern. "Lumi, get out here now!" Uriel yelled toward Lumi. Upon hearing this, she ran toward the screaming. As Lumi ran down the stairs, she wiped the tears from her face. bursting through the door, finding Dix Nox and Uriel standing guard looking toward Ansgar, his red eyes glinting in the daylight. Ansgar stood his back straight. As he spoke in a cold tone, "Are you leaving so soon? The fun is just starting." Lumi noticed Ansgar standing there, and all of her grief was replaced with anger as she lunged toward Ansgar, swinging her sword straight at his neck. Time seemed to stretch on as Ansgar stared at Lumi's sword approaching his neck. He caught the blade in between his two fingers, and a shockwave shot past him. Ansgar grabbed Lumi by her throat, holding her close to his own face, before he whispered in her ear, "You're getting stronger. Each and every day I wonder if that is a part of your hidden type." Before Dx Nox could try and help, Ansgar had already thrown Lumi at him. Ansgar stood up straight, staring down at the trio before he spoke, with a cold smirk. "It is a shame to cut this visit so short, but it's not time for you to die, and this world is collapsing." Ansgar raised his left hand, revealing a leather fingerless glove covering it. As Ansgar removed the glove, the air itself began to freeze and all sounds ceased. Dx Nox, Uriel and Lumi stared in shock as Ansgar snapped his fingers together, breaking the deafening silence. The world froze over and a portal opened beneath them, allowing them to fall through. As the group hit the ground with a thud, they stood up, Dx Nox and Uriel looking around, while Lumi looked at Ansgar, screaming at him with tears in her eyes to return Ajax. Ansgar stared down at them, before walking away, his footsteps completely silent as the portal closed in front of them. Lumi finally stopped screaming and looked around, noticing she is in her garden. "Hey Lumi, do you know where we are?" Dx Nox asked Lumi, his voice filled with curiosity. Lumi turned around to face Dx Nox before she bowed down, and she responded, "This is the safe area I was talking about. This is my realm, otherwise known as my garden." When Lumi lifted her head, she noticed Uriel was nowhere to be found.